April Fool's Day, YouTube! I brought out my fool's cap, and I decided, since it's April Fool's Day, I should discuss something foolish. So, what foolish thing am I going to discuss today? The voluntarism fantasy. So I'm going to start with reading a couple of passages from an essay. It's a long form essay, so feel free to go read it, but I'm not going to read the whole thing. But there are a couple of these very pertinent passages I thought that should be spoken in my video. Ideology is much about understanding the past is shaping the future, and conservatives tell themselves a story, a fairy tale really, about the past, about the way the world was and can be again under the Republican policies. This story is about the way people were able to insure themselves against the risks inherent in modern life. Back before the Great Society, before the New Deal, and even before the Progressive Era, things were better. Before government took on the role of providing social insurance, individuals and private charities did everything needed to insure people against the hardships of life. Given the chance, they could do it again. This vision was always been implicit in the conservative ascendancy. It existed in the 1980s when President Reagan announced the size of the federal budget is not an appropriate barometer of social conscience or charitable concerns. I bet he didn't write that. And called for the voluntarism to fill in the yawning gaps in the social safety net. It was made explicit in the 1990s, notably through Marvin Olasky's The Tragedy of American Compassion, a treatise hailed by the likes of Newt Gingrich and William Bennett, which should tell you that it's a bad source, which argued that a purely private 19th century system of charitable and voluntary organizations did a better job providing for the common good than the 20th century welfare state. That is to laugh. This idea is also the basis of Paul Ryan's budget, which seeks to devolve and shrink the federal government at a rapid pace, lest the safety net turn, and I'm quoting him, into a hammock that lulls able-bodied people into lives of dependency and complacency, that drains them of their will and their incentive to make the most of their lives. That is more bullshit. It is what Utah Senator Mike Lee references when he says that the alternative to big government is not small government, but instead a voluntary civil society. As conservatives face the possibility of a permanent Democratic majority fueled by changing demographics, they understand that time is running out on their cherished project to dismantle the federal welfare state. But this conservative vision of social insurance is wrong. Really? It's incorrect as a matter of history. It ignores the complex interaction between public and private social insurance that has always existed in the United States. It completely misses why the old system collapsed and why a new one was put into its place. It fails to understand how the Great Recession displayed the welfare state at its most necessary, and that a voluntary system would have failed under the same circumstances. Most importantly, it points us in the wrong direction. Now, the last passage of this essay, that's one of the opening statements that he wrote. Pardon me. But social insurance isn't just a collection of programs. It is a reflection of who we are and how we intend to navigate the risks of a modern age. Contrary to the idealized imaginings of conservatives, the four horsemen of accident, illness, old age, and joblessness won't be and have never been fended off with purely private means. Only a vigorous public response, rooted in Truman's vision of charity, can ensure our safe passage into a prosperous future. Now, when I speak about these things, one of my favorite things to discuss is food, because food is one of the most important elements of our survival. Without it, we are literally doomed. And as I've said before on this channel, and I'm going to repeat now, when it comes to food aid in America, private charities provide 1 bag of groceries for every 23 bags of groceries provided by federal programs. 1 versus 10, 23. All right? Private charities provide 4%. 4% of what we need for food aid in America. Charities cannot ramp that up overnight, or quite possibly ever, to handle that need. And there's a line in the essay which is we all contribute we all benefit, or something along those lines. And that's what we do. If we all put things into the pot, when we need it, the pot will be there. And when our neighbors need it, the pot will be there. But we all have to contribute to get that to function. And most of that contribution is going to be in taxes. Now, there's a person here on Metafilter that wrote a really cogent remark, and I'm going to quote it. I apologize if this is running long today, but heck, it's April Fool's Day, and I can be foolish if I choose. It's written by someone who goes by the name of Straight, and it was written on March 19th in the thread that I will be linking to. So I've been thinking about this a lot, having conversations with friends and family who are libertarian and thinking, and I've noted 5 main objections to welfare programs. 1. Self-interest, quote in parentheses, desire to keep what is mine, lower taxes. 2. Compassion, in parentheses, a belief that recent benefits while doing no work harms people and their communities, concerned about kids with no fathers around. Okay. 3. Resentment, and again in brackets, hate some people get something they don't deserve, only want to help those like themselves, deserving versus undeserving, poor, racism. That's a big issue. In America, we have 2 classes of poor, the undeserving and the deserving. And the deserving, funnily enough, always looks a whole lot like the person making the comment. If people in their class need those welfare programs, that's okay. But if people that aren't in their class need them, they are the undeserving poor. 4. Pragmatism, which is a policy and theory which I have lived by a great deal in my life. I'm very pragmatic in many ways. In quotes, or rather in brackets, government is corrupt, inefficient, rent-seeking, private charity is more effective, creates perverse incentives, hurts the overall economy, destroys jobs. Now, when I hear people talk about government is corrupt, and I hear it a lot on my channel and on YouTube at large, as Jen Huger made a comment just the other day, or just today it might have been, the corruption comes from big business. So if you are against government corruption, you are against money in politics. So unless you are working hard to get that money out of politics, you are not actually against government corruption. And 5, justice, and again in brackets. It's immoral to take one person's property and give it to another. Taxation is theft, taxation is slavery. Freedom! And whenever someone says taxation is theft or some version thereof, or taxation is slavery, anything like that, that shuts the conversation down for me. That shows me that they have the understanding of humanity, society, and economics of a dim high school sophomore. That statement right there is it just clicks. You're done. You've shown me that you have nothing to present to me. You have shown me that you are absolutely morally bankrupt, intellectually bankrupt on this topic. You do not understand what you are talking about by making those statements. And so I just walk away. Those are statements of a religious belief, and I will not argue religion anywhere on YouTube. It's pointless. If you believe in some God, cool, you believe in some God. Have at it. But your God is no better than anyone else's God. And that is a religious statement. That is not a political part of a political ideology. The last section of this passage. You can shame people about resentment and sometimes self-interest, but most conversations get derailed when people go back and forth between the last two, pragmatism and justice. I'm going to quote something. It's a word I don't normally use. Obamacare just won't work. And again in brackets. Here's evidence that is wrong, is working, or here's how we could make it work. But it's just not fair to force people to buy insurance. Again in brackets. Reasons you owe debt to the community that made your wealth possible. It discourages business from hiring employees, etc. They're always going to keep moving it. Nothing you say is going to help this, because again, you're arguing about religion. It's important to separate the pragmatism argument from the justice argument. One is an empirical argument about what works and what doesn't. The other is a moral philosophical argument. And of course, for some people, especially politicians, talking points about pragmatism and justice are used to hide motives of self-interest and resentment. And there you have it. It's the whole idea talking about busing instead of using the word nigger. You can't use that word, so you talk about things in abstracts. You undermine programs that help minorities. That way you can imply your racism as opposed to being explicit with your classism and racism and bigotry. That's how you do it. You can't be straightforward about it. If you're straightforward, it costs you at the polls. So you lie, and you cheat, and you deceive, and you use euphemisms. And all of this underlines the myth of voluntarism. It didn't work. People literally starved in the streets. Did any of you ever watch A Christmas Carol? That's a wonderful example of why voluntarism didn't work. They had a voluntary system for charity. And people ended up being thrown into workhouses and debtors' prisons. That's not a functioning system. A functioning system is where we make sure that no person falls below a certain level. We say you will never be hungry, you will never be homeless, you will never lack health insurance, and you will never lack an education. Below this level, we will not let you fall because we are humane. Because we understand that while today I do not need that safety net, tomorrow I might. That while today my neighbor may not need that safety net, tomorrow they might. And I want to make sure that that safety net is there for everyone. Always. Because we are humane. Because we have humanity. And that is what this is about. The voluntarism fantasy, the voluntarism myth is about, to me, the first three of those things. It's about selfishness. It's about a self-centered belief that as long as you've got yours, screw everyone else. And it breaks down when you're talking about pragmatism and justice. If we are just talking about pragmatism, we can have a conversation. We can say, okay, these funds should be allocated in this way to benefit our society the most, to get the most bang for our buck. Whether that's welfare states or private charities. Private charities have a role. They can be nimble and fast, and they can focus on tight subjects, while welfare programs can cover the broad issues that we need on a daily basis. But the welfare programs are always going to outperform private charity when it comes to the day-to-day grind. I read something recently about someone talking about when they were poor, and private charity would provide things like toys at Christmas or used sweaters or things like that. Awesome. He said, but welfare programs made sure that I had a place to live, and I had food, and I had an education. And those are the things that the welfare programs can do. Private charity can do other things. But we all need to pay in so we all benefit. Taxation is not theft. It is our paying into the insurance policies so that we make sure that ourselves and all of our neighbors never, ever suffer. This is about reducing suffering in the world, about making sure we do not perform classism by saying, oh, you're poor, we're just going to ignore you. We can do this. We have the ability. We have the power, and that power is political, and that power is monetary. We already have the money. It's here. Well, those portions of it that have been squirreled away by big business and other nations. It's just that the people who control that wealth are hoarding it and keeping it away from the people that need it. Yes, I am talking explicitly about wealth redistribution. Something we already have in America. It's just that it's being redistributed to the wealthy at the top, as opposed to the 99 below them. And we need to make sure that that wealth is distributed amongst the people who need it, who deserve it, because they created it. Our economy is run by workers and consumers, to use a military analogy, by the privates and the corporals and the sergeants. Those are the people that run the world. The people at top maybe get the shiny badges and the fancy hats, but it is the grunts on the ground that get things done. And we need to make sure that we, the people, are protected and take care of each other. So yes, I am explicitly saying power to the people. And that the myth of voluntarism is oh so foolish.